We'd love your calls on Eat Out to Help Out. Do you remember that? The scheme, getting us all to kickstart the economy. Well, was it a mistake? What do you think? 0207 862 2222 is the number that you need to give us a call. The Prime Minister is facing a grilling from the COVID inquiry as he prepares to defend his controversial Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which gave restaurant diners half-price food and drink on certain days back in the summer of 2020. Now, some experts argue that the scheme led to a spike in COVID cases that September. We're still waiting for Rishi Sunak to be asked about this specifically. But first, let's just take a look at the apology he made to those who lost loved ones during the pandemic.
I just wanted to start by saying how deeply sorry I am to all of those who lost loved ones, family members through the pandemic, and also all those who suffered in the various different ways throughout the pandemic and as a result of the actions were taken. I've thought a lot about this over the past couple of years. It's important that we learn the lessons so that we can be better prepared in the future.
Which is indeed what the COVID inquiry is going to strive to do, but not until, I think, 2026 we're going to hear back from the COVID inquiry. It's taking its time. Let us not focus on the inquiry itself, but focus on Eat Out to Help Out. Nick, what did you make use of it?
I did.
And what did you make of it?
Oh, it was a relief to get out, and it was a relief to have, relatively good value food. I'd already had COVID. I actually had COVID before restrictions. I had it right at the start.
Right.
And it was just nice to get out in a lawful manner and have some semblance of normality. And was happy to take any risks that were associated with that. I mean, there is a split opinion, isn't there, in terms of, obviously, people were dying every day, tragically.
Yeah.
But whether or not this scheme contributed to that, or whether it actually, there are experts who say, yes, it did, and there's research that says, no, it didn't. So we're probably never going to know. And at some stage, we needed to get on with our lives. So it was a gentle push to let's resume some sort of normality. So it was probably a good idea. It wasn't that expensive when one looks at the overall.
Just over 800 million quid, I think it cost.
Yeah. But, well, when you look at...
Sounds expensive to me, Nick. Well, I'm not sure.
That's not just on one meal.
No, it was
just on Nick's meal.
It was a maximum of £10 per head.
Yeah.
I think the average was about £6 per head. When you look at the cost of COVID, it was something like £70 billion.
Yes.
So when you look at it in the overall context...
You're absolutely right.
Bearing in mind what it was trying to achieve, it was trying to stimulate business. So he could have said, no, I'm just going to give more money away.
But it was get people out, get them to restart the economy. Of course, we should also talk about that alongside that, there was loosening of other restrictions as well. You could meet friends outside, etc., etc. Yeah. And let's just remind ourselves, like 2020, that was when it all began. So we're not talking about the year after, we're talking about the year itself. Suzan, did you make use of it?
I did make use of it, and exactly like you, I had COVID before the restrictions came in right at the beginning as well, though I didn't know it was COVID right then. I only knew when I had the antibody test later on. I think if this is the only thing that people can really try and pick Rishi Sunak up on the whole pandemic palaver, then I think it's a bit ridiculous, actually, because I do think that he was having to balance lots of different things, mainly the bit trying to save the businesses and all the related businesses that go into hospitality, which were all affected. And I think there was a very strong, and I think he would have been aware of it at the time. They would have been looking at risks as well. And I think they would have done on this particular thing.
Well,
but he comes out of the whole pandemic palaver with a bit more integrity for me than anybody else, because of the furlough, because of every time he stood up and talked to us from the podium, he seemed to have a better grip of the situation and his facts and his brief than anybody else.
But just going back on that, what has become increasingly obvious during this COVID inquiry, we've heard from Sir Patrick Vallance and Sir Chris Whitty, was that they found out about this scheme when looking at the media.
But Rishi Sunak was not Prime Minister at the time.
No, but this was a big government plan that had not been passed through, from what we're given to understand, the scientific advisors to the government.
But I do wonder if some of the people screaming about, he'd Eat Out to Help Out, it was a dreadful idea, were also the people screaming that lockdown should be lifted, because people suffer in many different ways.
Sure,
but I think it's important, without passing judgment on whether it was right or wrong. We're going
going to hear what people are saying at home in just one second. I think it is important when you've got a government acting together, when your chief scientific advisor and your chief scientific medical officer don't know
What made you
about
think
this
they were
scheme.
acting together? Where have you got that idea from?
Well,
They never acted together. We know that now, and that's what the inquiry should be looking into.
The government was at the time giving people instruction.
Yeah, mixed messaging.
Yeah. There was
Some people would disagree. Some people would say that the messaging was clear. Stay at home. What was it? Protect the NHS.
Exactly. What was it? Hands, face, knees, whatever.
The scientists, the medical profession were trying to keep everyone in. They were playing ultra safe.
Yeah.
And he was a chancellor, and he's got a job to look after, because if the economy doesn't go, it's going to result in death as well.
But you'd think someone somewhere, I still can't quite believe that someone somewhere didn't kind of do the maths on this and go, well, look, what impact might this have on the spread of the virus? And it doesn't sound like
you can make numbers say anything
done.
you want. Modelling never really works.
Let's speak to Amos in Manchester. Amos, good afternoon. What would you like to say?
On Eat Out to Help Out, as a group and personally, I think it was an awful policy. As you say, they didn't ask the experts at all. And for bereaved families such as mine who'd lost a loved one, I lost my grandma on the 2nd of April 2020. My mum ended up in hospital. We thought we were going to lose her in the second wave, which was contributed to, we feel, by the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. And certainly having experienced what we did in the first wave, we were horrified to watch people being encouraged, as the scientists have said, to go into busy places that were high risk. It was described, I think, once as epidemiologically illiterate. It was expensive. We know from an IFG, the Institute for Government report, that actually it didn't particularly work financially because people only went on the days where the offer was available. And not on other days, it was certainly at a time that led to this second wave, as I say, which my mother was caught up in.
Amos, did you make use of it?
No, I didn't, because at the time I remember, and friends of mine did, but I wouldn't do it because at the time I just couldn't see how that was consistent with what we'd been told and what the scientists were saying.
And that's what came across from Sir Patrick Vallance. He was saying it completely reversed the government's messaging that mixing was a high risk. That came from his testimony. Also, I think it was dubbed as well internally as Eat Out to Help the Virus. But what do you make, though, of the people making the point that at that time you needed to have a kickstart in the economy? You were facing companies literally having to shut up shop for good and never coming back. And this might have actually helped, even though it was only focused on the hospitality sector, might have actually helped save a significant chunk of that sector.
Well, obviously sympathetic towards the businesses, but there were other ways, and I can't, on the top of my head, I can't remember which witness it was, but there was another witness who said financially, you could have just given the businesses some support. You didn't need to encourage people to do that. And also, there were safer ways of doing it. We could have had Eat Out to Help Out outside and make places safer. So they were, then the messaging was consistent in saying, well, it's safer outside than it is inside. But that wasn't done.
OK. Amos, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you. And my thoughts to you and your family. Samantha in West Sussex. Samantha, welcome to the show. What would you like to say? Do you think Eat Out to Help Out was a good idea?
Good morning or good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Yes, Samantha speaking. Yeah, I think it was a very good idea. The reason I'm saying is people are cooped up in the houses, can't get out anywhere, and they had a chance of it. The COVID was getting a bit lower. I know it was still existing, but people were following all the rules, and they were wearing masks and everything, and they were distant.
I'm not sure people weren't.
And it was a very good idea to get out to the
people weren't wearing masks in the places. I mean, I remember we made use of it once, and we only did it once because. And again, I know I'm meant to be hugely impartial here, but I've got to express my opinion. I thought it was bonkers. I found myself in a very sort of busy pub, even though we were all spaced out, And I just thought that my brain cannot compute of what I've been told of what I need to do to protect myself. This feels like I'm doing everything against what I've been told. That's why
people needed to do it to a certain extent, because we were getting to a situation where there are some people who still have never gone back into a restaurant because they've actually been kind of so affected. So actually it's all part of that. But no, we weren't wearing masks, and you certainly aren't wearing masks when you eat. But going into somewhere that perhaps is sanitised, where there is more hand sanitizer, that's a bit more controlled, that's spaced out, is better than having everybody around your house and having a party or a dinner party, which people, I think, might have been more tempted to do if there wasn't another outlet.
And I think it helps with people's mental health. You
Correct.
know, we're dealing with people who are cooped up, and we're completely ignoring the fact that we're humans, and we need that human interaction.
And we're talking about the hospitality trade as though it's just a restaurant, but actually there's a lot connected
to
that.
Isn't it? It's
But there's also suppliers and farmers and waiting staff that aren't helped by a bung from the government to just the business. You need to have the business up and running for all those different people to get what they need, so their mental health and their families don't suffer, and their children don't suffer because they haven't got any work.
If he hadn't done it, there were so many more businesses that would have gone under. And the cost, what people don't realise or forget is when the economy stagnates completely, it's a complete meltdown. The cost implication is it leads to fatalities because of it's a knock-on effect all the way through the health system.
OK, let's take another call. Anthony in Cardiff. Anthony, what did you make of the scheme? Good idea, bad idea?
Hi, Alex. How are you doing, buddy?
Very good. Good to speak to you.
Really nice to speak to you. Big fan of the show. Always wanted to call in. I thought it was absolutely disgusting, mate. And I can't believe the other two panel members are backing it. It was unbelievable. It was basically, so we had the biggest health scare ever. We're all sat at home. Like, don't forget, when we first got told, we got told, say bye-bye to your grandmas, say bye-bye to your granddads. We had a big killer virus coming over here. I work in asbestos for a living. So if you don't even know anything about asbestos, but that's in the air. We can't see it. It's dust particles. We can't see it. We wear proper head masks with filters. We're breathing out air and breathing out all clean air, everything like that. But one, I can't believe the nation thought that those PPE masks protected you, because that's absolutely farcical. But the fact that the government then turned around and said to us to eat out to help out. So what you want us to do? You want us to leave our house to pop over to McDonald's to help, like what? The McDonald's franchise is struggling, is it in Britain?
I see your point. To be fair to Rishi Sunak, I think he was talking about the smaller pubs and the smaller family-run businesses. I totally take your point on the big corporations that perhaps didn't need the help. Anthony, did you not ascribe any value? I mean, you clearly disagreed with it. I think a lot of people will agree with you. But isn't there any value of the fact that it did help people go back towards normality? It did help people to sort of, we've talked about the mental health impact of people stuck in their homes for months on end. Do you not see any value of that?
Why wasn't we told to get out and exercise and get fit?
Yeah. Well,
we were allowed to. We were allowed to, Anthony.
The biggest people that were at risk of COVID were the unhealthy, right?
Yes, Anthony. We were allowed to go out. We were told that there was a specific amount of time every day to go out and exercise. That was permissible, and we were encouraged to do that.
Yeah, but we didn't have a full-on health message in this country.
That's all they say.
Eat healthy. If you think going to like places like KFC and McDonald's and eating their food is good for you,
I don't think they were part of the scheme.
That wasn't. I don't think that was Sunak's idea. I think his idea was to help the small business.
Take out part of the business. Anthony, glad we spoke. Thank you for your call. Let's quickly speak to Curtis in Leeds. Curtis, eat out to help out. Was it a good idea?
Yes, definitely. 100%.
Why?
I agree with that lady.
Susan
just said that it wasn't about just health. It was about an entire ecology and the whole economy, from the farmers to the suppliers to the workers. It's all about balance. And although the COVID crisis was awful, you've still got to remember how many people would lose livelihoods if we didn't make the decision to stimulate our economy.
OK, Curtis, a quick question then before we go. Good idea. Does it strike you as odd that the Chancellor at the time didn't, from what we know so far, we may find out a little bit more information later on today, didn't take any scientific advice. Bear in mind, this was what, 6 months after the virus, sort of after we've locked down? 6 months later, he's going, it's all right, everybody can go back into pubs, everybody eat out to help out, but he doesn't, from what we know so far, ask a single scientist, is this going to put people's lives at risk? Is this going to encourage the virus? Some people have said there was a 20% uptick. Other people have said you can't really connect that to eat out to help out. So let's leave that out. But does it strike you as odd that he didn't ask anyone?
It doesn't strike me as odd because obviously our government has advised us for a reason, and the advice given to the public was that you take precautions, you use masks, you keep safe space, you keep distance, and if you are more vulnerable, it is your responsibility to make sure you are safe fundamentally. If you feel vulnerable, you shouldn't be going into a busy restaurant.
Okay. All right.